Hey, I'm Willie from Fungi Ally here in New York at Rock City Mushrooms. And Ben, you're going to give us a tour today. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, glad to have you guys. This is Rock City Mushrooms. This is everything in the basement is mushroom land. We grow about 400 pounds of mushrooms, and in this space we also have grass-fed beef, some pasture-raised turkeys, and some hens for eggs.
Awesome. So mushrooms are kind of one part of the whole farm system.
Yeah, exactly. And all of our composted substrates gonna go into veg patch eventually.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, can you show us around?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So you guys are growing like 400 pounds of mushrooms a week, and
Yep.
you're buying blocks in
Yep.
to produce
Yep.
those. Can you walk us through that
Yeah.
process a little
Yeah,
bit?
so all of our blocks come from Maine Cap and Stem, who's a great substrate producer. We love them. They're awesome. So everything comes into the loading dock.
Yeah.
There's usually 2 to 3 double stacked pallets. So everything's on one of these.
Yeah.
But there's 2 of them.
Yeah.
And then so that's around typically 160 to 140 blocks.
Per pallet?
Per pallet. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we are trying to do a 2-week cycle with sometimes we get some extras, but so we'll get a shipment every 2 weeks and it will last us 2 weeks. So we go through half of the shipment every week. And stuff holds up pretty well. We keep it all in the cooler. As you'll see, stuff gets kind of tight. But it holds up pretty well, but sometimes in the cooler, if stuff's been out there, it will start to fruit. So a lot of times we'll set stuff that's from in the second week a little later than we would the first.
So stuff comes in here and then goes to the walk-in cooler?
Yeah.
Can we head there?
Yeah. So it's a tight spot, especially Tuesdays. It's the most tight because we also have our CSA stuff.
Right.
So you'll see it's packed to the brim.
Cool.
So yeah, this is all the CSA stuff, but I unloaded a bunch of the pallets here, where you can see these 2 if you want to get in there.
Yeah. And then you're using the CoolBot system here.
Yeah, exactly.
With the AC.
Yeah.
Using the CoolBot. And this is like a 10 by 10 or 10 by 15 or something?
Yeah, I think 10 by 15 sounds right.
Cool. And that's worked well.
Yeah, it works pretty well. Sometimes the AC, like last week, because it got so humid, it frosted over.
Yeah.
So we needed to like bring it down and bring it back up, or bring it up, bring it back down.
Yeah. Just de-ice it.
Yeah, de-ice it. But we have some bands that are refrigerated too, and so it worked out. But it was a little hectic. When it rains, it pours. It's kind of how it goes. Yeah. So stuff will come in, and then we put it in the cooler, and then usually the next day we'll set stuff out.
Okay. Great. So you got stuff coming out of the cooler.
Yeah.
It's just resting in there, and now we're ready to go into the grow room, right?
Yeah. So we pack everything from the cooler onto these great metal racks, and then we can just drag them in straight into the fruiting room.
Great.
Let's do it.
Let's roll.
Right next to all the other shiitake. Welcome to the grow room. We are growing 3 main varieties: some shiitake, some oysters, and some lion's mane. We grow a few different species of oyster, but basically the room is set up to best suit whatever's growing where it is. So this part of the room is super dry. That's where we keep the shiitake. They like it dry for the most part. The lion's mane get the airflow of the fan, and the oysters are pretty resilient, so they kind of get the whatever's left, but we like to get them a good amount of air. Yeah.
Your intake fan is over here.
So this is our outtake, the intake. Yeah, that's right. And then the outtake is in the other corner. So that blows out air from outside. That pipe leads here, and then we'll blow that air with the humidifier because it tends to dry out the stuff that's sitting right here.
Right. So the humidifier is right in front of that incoming
Yeah,
air,
exactly.
and that just humidifies the air
Yeah.
as it comes into the room.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people will connect their humidifier and their like intake, but
Yeah.
it's worked out pretty well. It's
Yeah.
you know, don't want to get too particular about it, and then have
And
to
you have a lot of
deconstruct it.
space in here.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh yeah, we got plenty of space.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
put it right there.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I have our humidity sensor here, just so we know if stuff's starting to dry out right here, and we can catch it before anything gets dry and crusty.
So right now it's 92%.
Yeah, and I like to try to keep it like high 80s, low 90s. If we go above that, then the floor gets wet, and I just, you know, for sanitation and other stuff, I think it's just nicer, and you don't slip.
Yeah.
And then if it's lower, then stuff I think tends to dry out.
And you have floor drains in here?
Yeah, we have floor drains that work pretty well. You can see there's lines in the floor because actually they're not exactly centered. So sometimes water will pool on either side, and that will just pull whatever's around there. Yeah.
Right. And do you spray any of your blocks in here? Like, do you spray shiitakes or?
Yeah, so we'll spray down the shiitakes before we set them out to give them a little extra water. I try not to do that in here just to keep things as clean as possible. We usually do them in here. This is like the wet room.
Yeah.
In the other room, and so spraying stuff down, and then sometimes second harvest we'll get a nice soak, just with the hose. To make sure water gets into the bag. Usually just for the oysters, the lion's mane, I found they don't really need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to show off these lion's mane?
Yeah, I'd gladly show off the lion's mane. So all the stuff on the metal racks for the most part is first flush, and most of that stuff's harvested already, but you can see we're starting to get some really big babies over here. And so those will come in nice and big in like a nice line, which make them really easy to harvest. And I just think they look great.
And are you cutting the lion's mane, or are you kind of like peeling it off?
Yeah, you can peel them off pretty easy. And what was I gonna say? It's nice because we do it at the top because a lot of times in the cooler they'll start to like grow already. They'll start to fruit, and you'll get like the lion's mane pins.
Right.
And so if you just start, exactly.
Yeah, kind of like these ones.
If you start where they're already pinning, I've noticed it takes less time for them to fruit, and also it's just a better flush, I think.
Cool. Right. So if you try and like have them fruit here, then it's like they have to abort everything that's going on up here and put energy here.
Right.
It's like, just let them do their thing at the top.
That's where they want to be. So.
Cool.
So that kind of brings me to the second flush, which is, once you start getting this stuff, there's still all this other stuff on the other side. So that's also really ready to go. So we take the blocks, we'll fold, once we harvest, we'll fold it to the other side, and then it goes vertically on these racks, and we just cut another slit on the other side.
Right.
So we now have these vertical fruits, and it's been good. It's been about like a pound for the most part on a second flush, which is pretty good.
Awesome. And on the first flush, what are you?
On the first flush, like 2.5, 2 to 3 pounds, I'd say.
Great.
Which I'm super happy about.
Yeah. Do you notice any difference in the fruiting from the when you change the orientation of the block?
So I think if we did it this way on the first flush, stuff would fall over, and the lion's mane loves to fall over because that fruit gets so heavy that it just gets lopsided and falls.
Yeah.
So I think the horizontal works, or the vertical works nicely for the second because it's less.
Right.
But just with the second flush in general, I've noticed that stuff is a little more like. I don't know if it's dense, but there's a little less water in them, which make them like almost tougher and like meatier. And they also get teeth way faster, and they have more teeth. Just generally.
I feel like this is a cool illustration of the different stages. Like you have where you can barely see the spines. Then you got kind of like, okay, you can see them, and they're getting close, and then here's the like basically ready to harvest, right?
Yeah, I like to try to get them
down.
like right as they're starting to develop teeth, because the shelf life isn't as good. Once they have teeth, they bruise easier, they get yellow, and so this would be, I'd harvest that today.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful mushrooms. Wow. Looks so good. There's something about like a wall of mushrooms that gets me so excited.
Totally. Yeah, it is. It's awesome. Yeah, especially when they're all popping out.
Yeah. Cool. And like oysters, you want just love to look at the oysters a little bit, talk about them. I don't know.
Yes, we have 3 kinds of oysters. We have a blue oyster, phoenix oyster or brown oyster, and a black oyster. And they grow pretty different, even though they're all the same species. So the blues, we just either cut from the top, a diagonal line, or we'll cut them from the side. Up here you can see some stuff. These actually might be, I think these are blue. It will say, could be blacks as well, but they both fruit pretty nicely off the side. And then for the phoenix, I'm still trying to figure them out, to be honest. Sometimes they'll grow really nicely with a diagonal cut, and then other times they just get kind of weird and they grow really tight. I think part of it's because the room's been cold and they're more of a warm weather oyster.
Right.
But, they're still tasty even when they look kind of weird.
Yeah.
And then for the blacks are awesome. They're like, the myth is that they're a mix of like a king trumpet and a blue oyster, but I don't think that's true. I think it's just a myth. But they do kind of have that consistency, like a thick base, a big like stem, and then the kind of light cap. Yeah. But they're some of my favorites. Restaurants really love them.
Yeah.
And we just try to kind of grow them from whatever sides. I'll do like a cut on the top, on the side. It's kind of like whatever I'm feeling. They take longer than the other oysters. The phoenix will take like 4 days. The blues will take like, or that's not true. The phoenix will take like 7 to 10.
Yeah.
These will take like 9 to 12, and then these will take like a good 2 weeks to really fruit. So
from cutting them to harvest, 14 days.
So that's more in line with like what it takes for the lion's mane.
Right.
And they're just slow to pin. But once they're out, they'll really start growing fast.
Yeah. And are you harvesting these pretty similar, where it's kind of just so like
just
twist and
pull?
Yeah.
These can be tough. They're much more brittle than the blues. The blues are
Phoenix?
Yeah. So sometimes I'll cut them off, or they really just pop off when you go for them, and sometimes you'll break a few caps when you do it. But for the blues are really, you can really just pull them right off.
Yeah. Have you found that the phoenix are less of like a cluster? Like the blues are such a cluster, and the blacks too are pretty solid cluster. But
you can see different? As when they pin, they often will pin as like a bunch of single fruits.
Right.
And they'll grow really tight together, but they're not really a cluster, and so that definitely makes it harder to harvest them. And so you kind of just got to go. That's why it's good to have the cut so tight to the block, so that everything that's fruit, like a full formed fruit, is all together, and then you can just take it all at once.
Right.
But it doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could just grow one species, who's like your dream species in terms of the whole thing? Like, you're gonna eat it, you're gonna be selling it, you're gonna be harvesting it, initiating it. Who's your? We've
upped our production the most with the lion's mane. The lion's mane, they take a little longer to grow, but like they're so cool looking. They do kind of grow like. They're pretty resilient, even though they're slow, I've found, as long as you have the airflow.
Yeah.
They taste good. You can eat them in a bunch of different ways. I dry them, put them in my coffee. And so, yeah, I think they're pretty versatile.
Yeah.
And I don't really get sick of them. I'll be honest. Sometimes I get a little sick of the blue oyster. It's like,
yeah.
But yeah, those are awesome. And the blacks also have been, I think they're really good. They have like a meaty texture, and I think they grow pretty well. And I haven't totally mastered them yet, so it would be cool to really get it down.
Are they a little more finicky to grow than the blue oysters?
Yeah, I would
Blacks?
say they're not as willing to, they're just not as ferocious when they pin but once they're out, I mean, they don't really need that, they don't need too much humidity. I've found like they can pin in pretty low humidity as long as they got a little, cover from the bag, and they just look cool and they taste really good. There's one of our restaurants does a deep fried black oyster, like chicken fried black oyster.
Oh my God.
And it's so good with like a little lemon, and they have like a aioli that they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
I mean, I love this color on them.
So
It's
cool.
like this like slate sort of coloring on the top. That's just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I think the Japanese name, because it's like a Japanese like made mushroom. That's where they like bred it.
Yeah.
And shimafuri, I think it's shimafuri is the Japanese name, which is like marbled. So I guess they thought that the caps were marbled or speckled, or I don't know. They're cool.
Yeah.
And I've actually found that sometimes when you cut them, this will happen in the oysters too, but like they like look marbled in the flesh of the stem, which is kind of cool too.
Cool.
Almost like a meat.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And your the lighting in here is just kind of a normal. We're underground.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
And the lighting is just fluorescent or LED.
Yeah, it's just
lighting.
fluorescent. I think it's standard with what the rest of the building is.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it gets a little dark under the racks when you're stacking, but it doesn't really seem to be hasn't really been a problem.
Yeah. And do you have to do a lot of heating, cooling in here, or is it?
There's a bit in the winter we will heat it. Where the intake fan is also a heater. And so we heat it in the winter, but we're underground. All the walls are cement, the floor is cement, so it retains a pretty cool temperature.
Yeah.
So like in the winter it will be low 60s, and in the summer it can get up to like 75, but it's pretty good to keep it within 10, consistently 10 degrees. So
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And do you shift species at all?
Yeah, so like part of why I wanted to try to get the Phoenix oysters in here more, like we've been trying to do a little more, is because I think, in the heat they'll be much better.
Yeah.
I'm a little worried about these guys as stuff starts to get warmer, because they are like a more cold species. But, I mean, they look pretty good, and it's still kind of cold. It's like 62 right now. So. Yeah.
So I noticed that you have two different kinds of racks in here, and that's always something people ask about. Like, oh, what do you use for shelving? You want to just talk about the different shelves you've got, and what you like about them, what you don't like about them?
Yeah, so we have these wooden racks, which are an older rack. I think they've been around for like 3 to 5 years, and you can see there's a little wear on them. But for now, they've been doing a pretty good job with the oysters. Since the block doesn't sit right on the wood, it doesn't like erode the wood so much. So it's been pretty good, and I'll take them and kind of try my best to wash them off with the power washer. But I think, as you can see, I think they harbor some insects. The spiders, I kind of welcome them, because I think maybe they're getting the gnats and some flies that could actually harm the mushrooms. But I also think that there are probably some gnats that like to hang out on these acting as like a little wooden petri dish, which is not the best. They're on wheels, but the wheels don't work so well. So what's really nice about the metal racks is that they have some nice wheels on them, and we can basically stack everything from the cooler out there and then just roll them all in to the grow room, which has been awesome.
Cool.
And they also, can fit a bit more. There's more space here, so sometimes stuff will wobble off the wooden stuff and fall off, but with the metal, it's a little more stable. And they're so easy to clean. Like power wash them typically. Yeah. Sometimes like to spray them down with isopropyl, you get stuff kind of stuck in the corners, but it's pretty good.
And so this is a 2 foot wide, maybe 6 foot long?
Yeah, it's 2 feet by 4 feet.
4 feet.
By 4 feet, and then 72 inches tall, I think.
Right, so five racks.
Yeah,
and you're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 10?
Yeah, so I try to get 10 of the oysters or lion's mane on a single shelf. For the shiitake, since they're fruiting all over the block, we do 8 per rack.
Okay.
And I'll kind of pop one off the side here to give them a little extra space.
Yeah, cool. So it's a 2 by 4. There's 5 shelves, and you can get 50 of the oyster lion's mane and 40 of the shiitake on one shelf.
Yeah, and these ones actually are a bit smaller. These are 18 inches deep.
Oh, okay.
So because the lion's mane are kind of upright, they don't need that space as much. So these are just old racks from our turkey processing spot upstairs, and they were rusting. It wasn't really, so we use them in the grow room. Nice. And they work nicely. Yeah, also 4 per shelf with these, but with the bigger ones, you can get 10 as opposed to 8. So yeah, and these are also 4 as opposed to that one, which is also 18 deep, but it's a 5 shelf.
Yep. And did you have to get like different wheels?
Yeah, we bought casters. Most like metal shelving like has a place where you can get casters for it. So yeah, for that one, which I personally did the shopping for, we got casters. These ones, the 2 foot deep ones, came with wheels. But yeah, I've heard that the casters can wear, like that's a problem that people have, is that the casters will wear out, or they'll stop working, or they like get bent funny and mess up the rack. But as long as you're careful with them and you don't get them, stuck in a bad spot and force them, it's been pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like one of the places where it's just like, just slow down.
Yeah, exactly.
It's worth it to be a little bit slower and not create a problem.
Yeah. But it's like $5 per wheel, so it's not the worst mistake in the world if you mess it up.
I've definitely had days of just being trying to get but the problem I've had is like getting the wheel off.
Yeah.
And just days where I'm like, why won't this come up? And just like hammering it and being like, ah.
Yeah. The casters on the wood ones like just stopped rotating, stopped rolling, and so eventually I just was dragging them across the grow room. So I was just like, these are stationary now. And when we had the shiitake racks, which were double, it was like these but 2 boards on each side, so they could fit 50 shiitake when we were doing them. But they really, because there was so much weight, because I think the shiitake eat at the wood way more because it's like open. It was no good. So very blessed to have metal racks now for the shiitake especially.
Yeah.
I think the bleach corrodes the metal racks way faster.
Right.
And also, even though like I know you can use bleach in a food safe way,
Yeah.
I just like the fact that like isopropyl completely evaporates.
Right.
So yeah, just make sure there aren't a ton of shiitake crumbs in there.
And these are just kind of like normal veg crates.
Yeah, they
bulb
just,
crates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they float around. These are the bigger ones. You can get ones that are like a bit shorter. But for shiitake, it's nice to just pile them in, as long as they're not like staying super humid and starting to stick to each other a bunch. Right. Why not get as much?
You can pile them deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, we'll get like 15. So you can fit like 15 to 20 pounds of shiitake per crate, which is pretty good.
Great.
So we once we clean that up, then we take our well-seasoned board, just a wooden board, and we'll just place it across the bin here, and so then we can take a shiitake block that's ready to harvest. Maybe I'd say some of this stuff's right on the edge, but a lot of this stuff seems good. So take a block and just plop it on, and then just kind of give it a haircut.
What are you looking for when you're like, is this ready?
Yeah.
Is this?
So a lot of times, like I'll check from underneath, like peek my head under, but I'm usually trying to get it where the gills are visible for sure, and there's still a little bit of a curl. So this is like perfect, in my opinion, and this might be a little early, but I think it's better to take them earlier than later, just because when it's curled under, like there's a little more protection for the gills, and the gills are usually what bruise first. And I just think like they're a little denser. I'm trying to see, maybe there's something that's a little too far out there.
Like, oh, nope, too well managed. Nothing gone by.
So like something like this, I guess maybe. When it starts to get wavy, when the kind of the white frill on the cap is not underneath, it's kind of one and the same with the top. That's when stuff gets a little more delicate, and I just think it's nicer to get them when they still have a little bit of a curl to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, this species of shiitake, or this strain, is kind of funky. I think the substrate, a rumor has it, the substrate has some soy in it, and so I think the extra nutrition there can make them look a little, you get a nice flush, but they also get a little funky sometimes. They really pack together and kind of get deformed,
like malformed,
but
yeah.
But they taste good.
Yeah.
So basically I'll just try to get an open spot. And a lot of times, like I probably won't harvest these, but a lot of the stuff on this side's good. So just kind of find an opening and pull them away from the block, and then just start cutting. Try to get as little sawdust on them as possible and just let them fall in.
And so you'll like half harvest a block, or like you don't have to take everything all at once?
Yeah, a lot of times if there's like a big difference between what's, like half the block looks like it could use a little more time, then we'll just put them back on.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for the shiitake, it's usually just one flush. So a lot of times, sometimes we'll also get some contamination on the block.
Yeah.
And so if it's looking like the block's starting to get like really taken by stuff, Sometimes blotch will come on later. And so sometimes it's just better to take it early rather than wait and let stuff, get squishy. Look at that, that's a nice one. But yeah, I probably won't take the rest. Maybe a few.
Big ones. And have you always cut, or sometimes you pull, or?
Yeah, I found with these, like when you pull, like sometimes you can get, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it will take like a chunk out of the block. Like I think that was from pulling.
Right.
And so just to keep things clean when they're in here and like to do less prep work, it's just nice to chop. We were thinking about getting like a sheep shearer or something, like electric scissors to just buzz off.
Little buzz cut?
Yeah, which would be
Number
cool.
2?
I think it might damage the caps, but it would be cool.
Yeah.
Might lose a finger or two.
And do you notice that these will grow like a lot faster in warm temperatures?
Yeah.
Like I'm imagining maybe if it was midsummer right now, you'd be like, I'm just gonna take this whole thing because by tomorrow it'll be blown out.
Yeah, totally. Or I'd maybe come in early. But yeah, like last week it got really hot. It got like in the 90s, and I like to try to take the weekends off. So Henry was covering for me, and Henry's like, hey, the grow room exploded this weekend. So he was a champ. He got them all done. There was like a huge stack of crates full of shiitake.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can fluctuate, and they do grow faster in warm temperatures. And I think they definitely prefer the cold, though. I think they grow nicer, denser.
Like a higher quality mushroom.
Yeah, they get like that nice kind of, I don't know, what would you call this?
Like ornamentation.
Yeah, sure.
On the cap.
And also pests are less of a thing when it's cold. I think the warmth for both like bacterial and fungal pests like the trichoderma, I think that comes out when it gets hot, and the gnats will also come out when it gets hot. So as it starts to get hotter, I'd like to have no wood racks in the grow room.
Yeah.
Just to try to limit it as much as possible.
I feel like the mushrooms are such little like tricksters. Like, oh, you want the weekend off? Like, no,
exactly.
Here's like 150 pounds.
Yeah, it's like babysitting kind of. It feels like you're babysitting a bunch of like little brats sometimes. I mean, you love them, but they misbehave sometimes. Don't do exactly as you'd like, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Mushroom farming.
After we finish harvesting the shiitake, we'll take a finished crate, label it with the date, the species, and how much it weighs, and then we'll bring it into the cooler where it will get packed later. When we stack everything up, we'll stack it, and then we'll throw usually like a tablecloth over the tower, because in the cooler stuff will get a little dry, so try to keep some of the humidity in there. But it can't hurt to dry them out just a tad.
Right.
Sometimes they keep a little better.